Leaders Talk, the interview podcast portraying leaders who are committed to better leadership, better organizations, and a better world. Powered by Leadership Choices.
Welcome to Leaders Talk, the interview podcast for better leadership, better organizations, and a better world. My name is Karsten, and I'm one of the managing partners of Leadership Choices. Today, we are bringing to you the second part of our conference, War in Ukraine, What Needs to be Learned and Unlearned to Enable Peace. In this panel, we discuss the options how to enter into a peace process from a diplomatic standpoint and also from the standpoint of a help organization, what needs to be done, what kind of demands and supplies need to be matched in order to master this humanitarian crisis that is of major magnitude. 13 million people had to flee the Ukraine so far. Only a small fraction of them reaches Germany and other neighboring countries. Most of them stay in our eastern neighbor countries. But what do we need to do in that perspective? So please, this is a very interesting and very helpful episode, and also requires your support. So if you can help, or if you want to get connected, please send us an email to leadership@leadership-choices.com. And now let's get right to the second panel of our conference. So welcome to the second part of this conference. So in the first part, we really wanted to understand what is the situation like in Ukraine? What is the situation like in Russia and Moscow? What are different perspectives on the situation? And now we come to our perspective, to the perspective in Germany, to the perspective, how can we help? And also to the perspective, how do we see this from a political standpoint? And I would like to introduce my two fellow panelists today. One is Christina Orisich from the Geneva Center of Security Policies. And then I have with me also Freddi Lange, who is the founder of Project Together and also of Alliance for Ukraine. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Christina, ladies first, what does the GCSP do? What's the origin? Help us understand, please.
Okay, so first of all, I would like to thank you, Karsten, for inviting me. I think it's a very, very important, conference that you've put together, and I think the sense making is really very important on all kinds of different levels. I also want to say that today I almost feel more like being part of the coach community, and here with my coaching hat. I also want to just set the scene. So I am not a security expert. I joined the GCSP 4.5 years ago, coming from the private sector, having worked as a coach as part of CCL for many years. So just to set the context. Very briefly on the GCSP has now been around for over 25 years. It's an international foundation financed by the Swiss Confederation. But it's an international foundation, and we have 53 countries in our foundation council, including the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council. Initially, actually, interestingly, it came out of the Cold War. It came out after the 1985 summit in Geneva by between Reagan and Gorbachev at the time, and was this the beginning of the arms race and all this, negotiations around those topics. The Swiss had at that time realized that they didn't have enough experts, not on the diplomatic side and not on the military defense side. So they've put together an 8-month-long course looking at all the aspects and everything in international security that experts would need to know to be able to contribute. And over the time, neighboring countries like Germany, Austria saw that they had the same need, and the countries participating in this expanded in this way. And Switzerland has also then, after a few years, joined the NATO Partnership for Peace, and as they were not really sending, helmets across the world, they were under pressure to actually also also have their contribution to the Partnership for Peace agreement. And so this foundation was founded in 1995 as the Swiss contribution to the Partnership for Peace. So we have initially, since then, also been recognized as one of the training center of NATO in their network, but we're independent. And we're also really built on the three Swiss principles, but I think it's very important to understand that this is really driving everything that we do. So we're built on the principle of impartiality, independence, and inclusivity, which makes us really work with all the countries in the world. We currently work with 174 countries, and we are also inclusive in the sense that we're not pushed by a certain agenda. So we don't focus on just certain elements of peace and security. And this is how also our focus has moved on in the last 25 years to be more relevant with the development also in international security, to include not just disarmament and this hardcore security topics, but to look at all the different elements of international security, and also to not just work with diplomats and people from the Ministry of Defense, but really include all the stakeholders. So we now work also with international organizations, NGOs, civil society, the private sector, to really be the safe platform where they can exchange, discuss, and learn together. Over the years also, although executive education has still been until recently the main area of activities and focus, we have also a growing activity pool around diplomatic dialogue. Here, for those may be familiar, there are three tracks. So there's the official track, the track 1, the track 1.5, which is semi-official, and track 2. We operate mainly on the track 2, which is on expert level, and track 1.5. And coming out of those activities, we also do some policy advice. And my role is deputy of the GCSP, mainly focusing on executive education.
Christina, so is it fair to say that in your institution, in GCSP, people come together that are officials, that are post holders, that are diplomats from different countries, also opposing countries in conflicts, in wars, that come together on this neutral place in Geneva to talk with each other, to learn, and to have some sort of a dialogue?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that since we work with 174 countries in our courses, they're regularly representatives, and not just from official, as I said, they're also from civil society, from international organizations, from NGOs. So it's really a unique place where we can look at all the different topics in international security from all these different lenses and create a better understanding also between one another. I always say at the beginning, we're coming here, it's a unique opportunity because normally in diplomatic academy, you only have diplomats, and in defense academies, you have only military people. In business schools, you have only private sector. And here it's really a way to actually exchange understanding the different parties. I always say we don't have to agree, but we need to really be open-minded. And I also agree with Anna, this critical thinking is super important. I think also because the biggest challenges that we have at the moment, and that's for all humanity, on this world, is our transnational challenges and threats, be it in climate change, be it in terrorism, be it in so many different other areas. So we have to tackle those challenges together. And this is really a safe space because we also don't push a certain agenda to really help facilitate this dialogue and this education. And here again, when I looked at the question in the previous panel about could this war have been foreseen, I think it's difficult or easy afterwards to talk about what could have happened or what should have happened. But really, I think has been lacking is that, this peace also in Europe has been taken too much for granted, and we have not looked enough into the lessons of history and also conveyed this knowledge to newer generations, and maybe also different other parts of the world. So I totally agree also that the lessons from history are really important, because if you look at it over time, it repeats itself in certain ways, and we seem not to learn from certain events.
Christina, thank you. So, and we will come back to how the role of a GCSP could look like in the further, peace process or end of war process. And I'm also glad that Freddi is here. So from a more behind the scenes, diplomatic, political way of dealing with the war, Freddi, you are tackling the humanitarian aspect of this war, and you're doing this with an entrepreneurial spirit. You also have a WHU background. Can you introduce yourself a little bit and talk about Project Together and Alliance for Ukraine, please?
Sure. So first of all, also thank you for the invitation. And Christina, super interesting what you're working on, super important. So yeah, I'm Freddi, working for Project Together for about, started with some others 2 years ago. And what we are actually doing is that with Project Together, we analyze the biggest issues of our time. So either if it's climate change, or 2 years ago it was the COVID crisis. And with this, we start off and bring all the relevant actors. So either if it's the government or certain companies or universities, all that stuff. So different actors from several sectors together. And use the joint forces to tackle the biggest issues of our time with all the power we can bring together. So we call this collective action, or like open social innovation. And for example, 2 years ago, we had this together with the German government, and when it was about the COVID crisis. So there we kicked off the biggest collective action process we had so far in the world, with more than 28,000 participants. And from there on, we initiated and co-created over 150 new projects, new ideas of how we can tackle the issues that came up due to COVID. So either if it's, for example, online learning, or how for example, entire ecosystem in the medicine part in Germany can work together more closely. So these different things. And we also do this in the topic of climate and farming. So this is one, and then circular economy is also one thing. So actually, this is always the process. How can we bring the relevant actors together, and how can we use the joint forces of them to, do the best we can to tackle the biggest issues of our time. And now,
just to understand, so I mean, it looks like a list of all the challenges that humanity has over the last 100 years. So your role there is to identify players who play a role, and from a certain size, and then kind of bring them together, match them, make them talk, and what then?
100%. Yeah. And then, so the second step is like give the actors who are actually working on, like fixing the issue. So oftentimes in our processes, these are either social startups or NGOs, or also so many from the civil society, especially, to give them everything they need to work on their idea, to push their idea forward, and to tackle the issue. So we did this, or we always do this, even if it's, for example, funding, we always support them with a program where the people get money, or if it's tech capacity they need, or reach out, all the different things you have to build up your idea, to build up also your impact, of course. And this is where we support them. And of course, and this is really important because this is not done sufficiently so far, to bring the different sectors together. So of course, the strengths of the civil society are totally different in comparison to the strengths of the government, for example. So the civil society is much faster. They super agile, and this is super important, especially in such a crisis situation we have now. But of course, when we also look in the future, and not only for short term, but if we want to tackle the issues in the best case forever, of course, the civil society and has to work with other sectors, either if it's the economy or also the state. And we want to build a platform where different sectors come together, and where it's not about who solves the certain issue, but it is more important that the issue gets solved. And now, like the second step is when the war started 5 weeks ago, we were in this situation where we were sit together and asked us, what is the best approach here to use our strengths of our network and our capacities we have to do the maximum we can to especially support the people that are coming from Ukraine and need support here. So we do not focus on like the primary factor that the war is going on in Ukraine, but we try to do the best we can when it comes to the secondary issues and problems. So all the refugees coming from Ukraine, in Poland, in Moldavia, but also in Germany, to give them everything they need. So to the refugees, everything they need, so that they have in the end have everything they need to find a place to sleep, for example, to get legal support, to get psychological support, all the different things that are crucial and have to come up now in like no time. And there with this, we started off 5 weeks ago with a short call where we thought 30 people would come, and then we had 100 there. By now we have over 300 organizations from different sectors. So it's, for example, SAP, one of the biggest companies in Germany, over different foundations like the BMW Foundation or the Robert Bosch Foundation, so one of the biggest foundations we have in Germany, but also, for example, the Ministry for the Interior and the Federal Chancellery in Germany, and they come together there with the Alliance for Ukraine, bundle all their resources, and this is what we're actually working on. So give the organizations that are working on supporting the refugees everything they need, so that the refugees are safe, at least here in Germany or in Poland or everywhere else. Yes.
And Freddi, what I really like is this. I mean, you scale it. I mean, you really start and think about, how do we do this? How can we scale this? How can we make it really big? How do we get the big players together? Which is a heck of a task. There's also a lot of technology and a lot of entrepreneurial spirit that goes into this. So you have predefined kind of, can we say, topic areas or clusters of offerings where people or companies who are offering support can register. And then there's also people who need support, or organizations who want to organize support can kind of connect with. So it's again, the idea of matchmaking, but on a larger scale, on a very concrete crisis, humanitarian crisis that involves, that entrepreneurial thinking.
Yeah, 100%. So as you said, it's really about matchmaking. So we have these, as you said, fields of action. So either, for example, childcare or psychological support, housing, accommodation. And within these fields of action, we have different NGOs. For example, in the field of psychological support, we have Krisenchat, which is also a WHO startup. And they provide psychological support via WhatsApp. But there are also, for example, IpsoCare and Jugendnotmail, so different players in this field, and they directly reach out to the refugees coming to Germany, but also in Poland. And they say, hey, like, we don't have the capacities. We have to scale up our structures. We need money. We need tech capacity. We need people who work in our company for the next 8 weeks, for example. And then we start off with project together with the Alliance for Ukraine and try to bring all the resources together and bundle them so that, for example, in this situation, Krisenchat gets everything they need to help the refugees with psychological support. And over the last weeks, we bundled, for example, 1.5 million euros which can be asked for the NGOs, but also, for example, around 100 translators who support the NGOs, and some other pools of useful resources that helps the organizations that in the end helps all the different refugees from Ukraine. Yes.
And Freddi, is there a technological platform that you're using? I mean, I imagine this matching to be a lot of manual work and one-off, but any sort of app, or how do you do this?
Yeah, super important question. Thanks for that. So we really thought about it. So in our last process, for example, as I said, in the COVID crisis, we used the digital platform. But in this situation, we made the experience that it's really about also the personal connection, that people meet, and it's not about I need this. And in the end, there's another one who said, I have this, you can get it, but there's no direct interconnection between the people. So what we see here in this crisis, and if there's anything what is good in a crisis, even there's nothing at the end, people are really willing to help. And this is really important, especially in this situation. And using this potential and also bundle these willingness to help is something that is not that good, or not that easy to do it on a platform or with a digital tool. So we use digital tools not everywhere, in some situations, but mainly it's really about the personal connection. So every Monday and Wednesday, for example, we have a call from 6 to 7 p.m. and there we made this connection, and we made a matchmaking between the different players who should talk. It's really about the personal connection we put in the focus. Yeah.
Thank you, Freddi. Christina, now back to you, working kind of behind the scenes, if I may say that. What would be a possible scenario from your perspective to engage in a ceasefire process, to engage eventually in a process of mutual communication, of forgiving, of peacemaking? What's your vision there?
Mm-hmm. So first of all, maybe to say what we currently can and cannot do. So I think that here again, I want to stress the role of executive education, because on all our diplomatic dialogue activities that we've also had between, Russia and the West, especially the quite known Champs-Élysées round tables, they have stopped overnight to zero. So here at the moment, in the short term, we're really focusing a lot on executive education. For example, we've had 3 courses that were running at the same time on the 24th of February, where we had Ukrainians and Russians in there. And that was really very different from the different topic. Obviously, one was the European security course, which was most difficult to manage actually in that period. And here again, for the other courses, it was very actually good to have them all in the same room, even if it's requires a whole different type of facilitation to have them stay. In others, it was more complex. And here also we were a lot under pressure also to actually exclude the Russian participant of the courses. And here also personally, I was very torn. And I think that in the end, we decided to be very clear in terms of where the red lines were, really not to use this as a propaganda, platform. So we've been very, very clear, and also very clear of the consequences of going forward. So we were not, even if it might have become even a diplomatic issue, we were going to exclude that person if the red lines were passed. But it was really important also to get this dialogue and also have other countries understand actually what is going on and have different types of information. And again, it's not about agreeing, disagreeing. I think we all agree, and GCSP is very clear, though we're neutral, not political, is that we absolutely condemn this war. It's absolutely breaching all the international humanitarian law and just not acceptable, and the massacres are absolutely not acceptable. And at the same time, we have to think about what happens after the war. As I mentioned, many of the transnational threats and all of the challenges that we have cannot be handled totally without Russia in the longer term. So we need to also have that in mind. And so parallelly, the track 1, the official dialogues have stopped. Track 1.5 is also not really active, but what even us surprised us a bit that on the track 2, on the expert level, there are dialogues happening. There are, not in person, so it's only just virtual, and it is, the experts are extremely careful about what they say. I think that also here, I think the Western world is very vocal. We know what they are thinking about. When we here again look in between the lines with the experts from Russia, what we are seeing or hearing or interpreting is that they also were taken by surprise. They didn't expect that, and at the moment they don't really have the ear either of the of the top so I think Putin and his closest circle. So I think that it is really important, and that's really our contribution that we can take at this time, is to, wherever dialogue is still possible, and where we as a neutral platform can support that, we should do that. And coming back to the ceasefire and negotiation, it's very difficult at the moment to even predict, because for a peace process to start, there needs to be some to be negotiated. And Russian perspective, it's difficult to see any prospect of peace talks short of Russia's fulfilling its minimal strategic objective, which is the control of the entire Donbass plus control of the southern eastern coast, linking Crimea to Russia. Hence the importance also of the control of Mariupol by Russia. And just as a matter of magnitude, the whole of Donbass is almost 3 times the size of the territory of the separatist republics declared on February 22nd. And this is an area that is much larger than Switzerland. Also to bear in mind the 9th of May, which is the celebration of the armistice, and a very important symbolic date for Russia to reach these objectives. So, in the short term, this is really problematic for potential peace processes. And from the Ukrainian perspective, before the Bucha massacre, the Ukrainian government was ready to negotiate. Now, these prospects are also more remote. So in the current circumstances, it's quite difficult to see the start of a peace process. It will probably, unfortunately, require, further time and for Russia to achieve its minimal objective. So the prospect in the very short term are not extremely positive.
Okay, that's one very, doesn't turn us very optimistic, but I think it's the reality. But I think what is more important to learn is that there are still some back channels where expert communicate with expert. Is this on virtual platforms or by email? What do you mean by virtual? How is this communication happening in real life?
It's so through online different types of platform, and also we are not involved in all of them. We just again hear them, but we are involved in a couple. Here it's really early days. I think that also since in the near future there won't be any meetings that will happen face to face, it could also be that, I don't know the English word, but in German is the pendle diplomacy, where basically those who mediate a bit go and see one country and then bring the message to another one, and going this way. But I think in any case, what is really clear is that we will, after this hot war, get back to a Cold War, which will be a Cold War 2.0. It will be much more intense than the initial one. And I think the element of trust has been talked about quite a lot today. And trust is lost by the pound and you win it by the penny. And when you just look at all the years and decades and people who've been involved in getting out of the Cold War and rebuilding that trust, and still I think under Russia and the US, I mean the trust was not really ever rebuilt to 100%. So here again, it's not just with Russia, but it's not just with the US, sorry, but with many other countries. And I think it will be a long time before people would travel to Moscow to shake Putin's hand after what happened in Ukraine.
Thank you, Christina. Freddi, to more tangible help, I've been on a call from the WHO network where you introduced Alliance for Ukraine, and you said what we need right now is project managers. What concretely do you need as support, and how can companies support you? How can individuals support? What are there for options?
Yes, super important question. Unfortunately, it's still the same. So on the one hand, we need project managers. So not only for the Alliance for Ukraine as itself, but also especially for the organizations that are in the Alliance. So for example, we have Wunderflats, which is actually a for-profit startup when it comes to accommodation, but now they fully focus on finding suitable accommodations for refugees, and they really are searching for 3 project managers from half to full-time for the next 6 weeks. So this is a big issue for them. The project managers is unfortunately always a bottleneck, especially since many people want to support with like 5 to a maximum of 10 hours a week. But we, due to the the high agility of the situation, need people who have a bit more capacity. So that's the one thing. And then a second one, which is also really important. So since a week now, we also cooperate with the health government in Ukraine, and every day they send us a list with the different pharmaceuticals, but also medicine resources. So for example, fentanyl, ibuprofen, all the different medicines, and they give us an amount they need, and we have a work with the coordination hub in Poland, which brings or delivers all the medicine within Ukraine. And so if anyone here in the group or anything knows a supplier for medicine or for pharmaceuticals, this is a big issue. So on the one hand, in Germany, under 100%, but more important, also in Ukraine, in Poland. So this is a big issue. If I may, I can also share the list afterwards with the different things that are needed. And then a third thing, which is always, unfortunately, still a bottleneck, although we have 100 translators, this is not sufficient so far. So people who speak German and Ukrainian or German and Russian is one of the scarce resources we have in Germany so far. And especially also in comparison to 2015 and 16, when many people from Syria came, this wasn't a big issue since many of them were able to speak English. And here we have a fully new situation. And this is actually something we have to deal with. So if you have any connections to people who can support here, not as a full-time position or also like here, actually every hour counts. So every person who has the possibility to translate, either if it's a website from a German NGO or different stuff, please reach out to me. I'll send my contact details in the chat. So these are the three things that are currently, really scar, and we're looking for support here. Yes.
So project managers, pharma, and translators.
Yes.
Okay. Last point, last opportunity for closing your remarks. Just to make sure that we finish on time. Christina, one word of closing. Leave us on an optimistic note, please.
Exactly. This is what I wanted to say. We also have to be realistic, but in the outcome, in the longer term, there needs to be the optimism. This can't go on for ever, and we have to rebuild, the dialogue and communication. And it would take, on a personal level, it will take years to, if not decades, to, open certain relationships, maybe, but when you look at humanity and what we've already gone through, I'm very positive that there was also light at the end of the tunnel, even if the way there is not, as we would all hope, quick and smooth. But I am very optimistic, and I think also, in our area, many people talk of Putin's war and not of the people. And so I think that's also something that will really help end it in a positive way.
Thank you. And thank you all for being here. Thank you, Olja. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Natalia. Thank you, Leonid. Thank you, Freddi. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, everybody here. Thank you, Hanne. Thank you, Gary from Kellogg WHU Network. Thank you for supporting this. I think it's a little contribution, a little dialogue, but it's important nonetheless that we keep talking, that we keep this up. So stay healthy, everybody. And I know it's difficult, but there will be Easter. For many of us, this is an important time with our family, and I hope you can all enjoy it, or at least spend some quality time with them, even despite some difficult circumstances. And let's stay connected. We will distribute all materials. So dear speakers, if you want to share anything, please send me an email, and this will be part of the email going out to the entire participants. So again, thank you so much. Wishing you a nice remainder of the day. Stay safe, and let's be in touch. Bye for now.
And what have you learned, Karsten?
As the philosopher Sir Karl Popper once said, there's no realistic alternative to optimism. There's no realistic alternative to optimism. And I think this is also, this fierce kind of optimism is what is needed right now, because the signs are not necessarily promising that this war will be over soon. We all hope and pray for a ceasefire every day, but the odds look like it's not too likely, unless like at least a minimum amount of victory can be claimed from the side of Russia. But let's see how this unfolds. So what do you take away? Where do you get engaged as a company, as a private person? Do you need connections? Can we help you to link you up with Alliance for Ukraine or GCSP? Just let us know. Send us an email at send us an email to leaderstalk@leadership-choices.com. leaderstalk@leadership-choices.com. And now, please stay healthy and see you soon here at Leaders Talk. Bye for now.
This was an episode of Leaders Talk, the interview podcast portraying leaders who are committed to better leadership, better organizations, and a better world, powered by Leadership Choices. If you want to give us feedback, please send an email to leaderstalk@leadership-choices.com. Thank you for listening.